Good morning, everyone. My name is Naveen KS. I am one of the co-founder of Leaders and Coaches of Asia, and I'm very glad to kick off today's second version of Leaders and Coaches of Asia conference here. I will introduce Peter Hawkins here. He is very well known in coaching fraternity, but the people who are joining from the leadership side, I would like to introduce. The Peter Hawkins is one of the top 100 coaches globally, and he's an international thought leader in system coaching side of it. He is a emeritus professor of leadership at Henley Business School in UK. He's also honorary president of Association of Executive Coaching. Currently, he's chairman of Renewal Associates, and he's also a joint founder and dean of the Global Team Coaching Institute. I know a lot of team coaches may know about this institute. Peter has been a keynote speaker at many international conferences on learning, organization, leadership, executive coaching. And he also teaches and leads master classes in systemic team coaching in over 50 different countries. He is author of many best-selling books and papers in the field of leadership and team coaching, systemic coaching, supervision, and organizational transformation, especially on the leadership team coaching side. A few of the famous books he has is Leadership Team Coaching in Practice, Systemic Coaching. I have that book, by the way, Peter. I refer that all the time. And also recently, just like 2 weeks ago, he released Team of Teams coaching book. I would definitely ask everyone to buy it. And it's already on my Amazon buy list for August month. Peter is also helps in has another books in supervision in helping professions, integrative psychotherapy, coaching, mentoring, and organizational consultancy, creating a coaching culture, The Wise Fool's Guide to Leadership. These are some of the famous books I just listed, but he has authored more than 30 books. At present, he supervises and mentors many coaches, and he provides consultancy to the business internationally. And he also runs international training and master classes. He lives on edge of Bath, UK. And this is very interesting, Peter. You mentioned that you live 37 and at the house shared with 37 acres with a lot of animals. We would definitely want to know a little bit if time permits. But thank you very much, Peter, for joining to Leaders and Coaches of Asia here. And I'm going to pass on to you now to begin the session. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Naveen, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. I have done a lot of work in Asia, and honored that my books have been translated into Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and all countries I have run trainings in and worked with organizations in. And I'm currently doing work with the Singapore government, so coming out every year as a senior fellow of the Civil Service Leadership College in Singapore. So it's a place close to my heart. And let me share some slides, because today I'm going to be talking about systemic team-of-team development and how it can enable organizational transformation. And later on, I'll also just say a little bit about what are the implications for those of you who are online who are coaches or team coaches. But this is based, I'm just seeing why the slides are not changing. There we go. It suddenly wakes up and goes about 10 slides. There we go. We're going to cover three major areas. How are top organizations integrating individual coaching, team coaching, and team of teams coaching to drive organizational transformation and greater alignment and a connection across their organization. Opportunity to learn how to address inter-team dynamics and challenges that emerge in one-to-one coaching, and to learn how every team is in itself a team of teams, because people will be arriving at the team carrying other team identities. So with a senior team, the marketing manager is carrying the needs of the customer and the marketing department, the financial manager, the investors, and the finance teams, etc. And the CEO and others may be members of the board. So even though you're working with a team, it in itself is a team of teams carrying different needs and different requirements. So for the last 2 years, I've been leading global research with over 70 organizations covering over 30 countries in 6 continents and all major different sorts of sectors. We used questionnaires, interviews, and then selected a number to write joint case studies. We brought out a research report looking at how organizations were using systemic team coaching, but also what they were doing to take that to the next level, and where was the best leading practice in systemic team of teams coaching. And this research and the emerging case studies have all contributed to this book that's just come out from Coke and Page that I wrote with my colleague from Canada, Dr. Catherine Carr, Team of Teams Coaching, using a teaming approach to increase business impact. The research has many new emergent theories, models, and methods, and we're now incorporating that into our highest level of training, the global online training, the Senior Practitioner Program in Systemic Team Coaching. Because more and more I'm arguing, and there's a whole chapter on this in the book, that the world doesn't need more individual coaches or team facilitators or consultants. What organizations in the world generally is really short of is people who can partner with organizations, enabling in-depth change at the individual, team of teams, organization, stakeholder level, and ecosystem level. People who can connect change across all those levels are in very short supply. So now in my mid-70s, what's keeping me working is how do we develop enough of those people who can help governments, can help large global organizations do that work that is so urgently required. One of the global CEOs I interviewed said to me, Peter, I've got lots of coaches who coach my leaders. I've got lots of consultants who consult to various parts of my organization. But that's not where our challenges lie. All our challenges lie in the connections. The connections not just between leaders, not just in teams, but between teams, between divisions and departments, and between us and our stakeholders, and between our stakeholders. That's where all our challenges lie. And he looked me in the eye and he said, so Peter, where are the coaches that can coach the connections and not the people or the parts? And that's part of our endeavor, is to try and develop those people. So what did we discover from this research? First of all, we discovered from the questionnaire what really made systemic team of teams coaching successful and what sort of issues hindered or blocked it from being successful. And I'm mainly going to address the ones on the left because a lot of the others are the reverse of the success factors. First of all, it was far more successful when it started with the senior executive team. Often it then went to also involve the relationship between the executive team and the board. But getting that alignment right from the top and the role modeling from the top was important. Secondly, that it was based on common business challenges. I'm often quoted the line I created which said, it is the purpose that creates the team, not the team members who create the purpose. So we need to start future back and outside in. Not what do the team members want from coaching or team coaching, but what does their stakeholder world that they create value for need them to learn, develop, and step up to? Systemic team coaching was more helpful when there was a common language and approach and tools across. So it was unhelpful where organizations had allowed teams to each recruit their own team coach, and there was no alignment of approach or language. It was useful when there was diagnostics at the beginning, at the end, that could measure the progress of the team. And indeed, most of the teams that we have worked with around the world have always developed a number of team KPIs, key performance indicators, that are not the sum of individual ones, but they are performance goals that can only be achieved by the team working together. So very important that if you're doing multiple team coaching in an organization, that there's not just a shared approach, but there is some shared supervision so that the team coaching is actually attending to the space between teams, not just the relationships within teams. And then that there's an alignment between what the teams are doing, the divisions, the departments are doing, and the organization is doing. And there were some very interesting findings about how you can both use external systemic team coaches for senior teams, but can then train up internal leaders, HR, business professionals, internal leadership and development people to also do systemic team coaching with the lower level teams in the organization, but with a shared approach. So that got summarized into this 4 essentials and 4 enablers. That team coaching is best when there's senior sponsorship, organizational alignment around what the organization is needing to achieve over the next 3 or 4 years to be more impactful. That there is stakeholder engagement and feedback in that sets the goals for the team coaching and development, and when it's centered on real business needs. The enablers include that there is good external support, a strong supported process, not only of coaching, but of supervision of coaching, that there is use of internal and external data to both set the journey for the team coaching, but also to evaluate progress. And it's made a clear priority and plan, not a nice to do, but a key necessity. And part of what we also discovered is that systemic team coaching needs to be different for where each organization is in its developmental cycle. We started to adapt this model from Hollings and Gunderson. And that is because actually there's a very different approach needed in the growth phase. So the phase when the organization is trying to stabilize and get alignment and working in multiple places with multiple products, multiple teams, to when it might be in decline or transition to a new approach, and then into regeneration and renewal. And that's a figure of 8 that continues. So what did we discover about the emergent best practice? So there were 7 key and one overarching 8th key aspect, right? The first was that to have real good alignment and collaboration in and between teams, the systemic team coaching needs to start with the leadership team. There, the key aspect is to help that team move from a team of leaders, each taking responsibility for their function, to a leadership team. And just to explain the difference, in a team of leaders, the only point where everything is integrated is the CEO. And in today's world, that makes an impossible role for a CEO. in a leadership team, every member takes responsibility for the whole, not just their function. So the HR director is as worried and focused on how we are creating shareholder value as they are about employee satisfaction. The sales director is worried about employee satisfaction as well as sales figures. So there is that sense of we are all looking at the complete stakeholder map and how we create win-win-win for all the stakeholders we are there to serve and create value for. The second, really important, which I've already part mentioned, is to create a strong teaming between the board and the executive team. So we do not have an executive team that are just presenting to the board and being critiqued by the board, but there is a partnership where they are both working on the strategic direction and the development of the capacity of the organization to meet today's challenge, which is that every organization is having to do more at higher quality with less resource. Then it often develops to coaching key teams across the company or the organization, many of whom report into the main team, but also other significant teams. But not just coaching the teams one by one, but also coaching the horizontal connections between them. Embedding that teaming into the organization's core process. Like, how do we reward teams, not just individuals, for performances? And how do we have teaming ability as one of the things we measure in recruitment and promotion? And then, as I've already mentioned, how do you train a cohort of internal people to be effective team coaches? And then, how do you create teaming as a competitive advantage in how organizations team with their stakeholders? To give an example, we've done a lot of work with one of the big four professional services firms, developing their ability to team with their global client organizations. And the feedback from the client organizations is, we will always come to this professional services firms because they grow our internal capacity and they know how to team well with us, not make us dependent on external resource. But the final thing around the outside is that there needs to be built-in evaluation of the team of teams work as it grows and evolves. So there is constant learning and evolving of the process. And this we can look at as a journey, but of course it's also a cycle. To give you one example, a 3-year process that Renewal Associates did with GHD, which is a international civil engineering company, that in the work I did with the top team and the board, they set out to double their beneficial impact in the world within 3 years. And they did that by moving from having an executive team, each running their own part of the business, to an enterprise leadership team with no headquarters, because they wanted to become a globally networked company that could partner with major organizations, local governments and governments around the world, supporting them globally, but working with them locally, so that the work could be delivered by various parts of their organization, wherever the work was located. As part of that work, it started with that movement to move from a team of leaders to a leadership team. It then changed the whole relationship with the board. So now there was a real partnership, not just the executives proposing to the board and the board agreeing or critiquing, but together working on how do we increase the beneficial of this organization, not just for shareholders, not just for employees, not just for client organizations, but also for communities and the future ecology of our world. And they developed a number of strategies around the future energy, future communities, future of water, really critical strategic issues that we all face around the globe. And as part of that work, we brought together, once also the teamwork had developed at other levels, the top 120. But now, instead of speeches from the platform, all the 120 kind of significant leaders from around the world came into a very large room with 12 round tables with a big bullring space in the middle. And we had loud music playing, and each table was facilitated by one of the senior leaders with a mix of people from right across the organization around their table of 10 people. And before there were any speeches, all the lights went down, the music stopped, and two of their major client organizations came on screen and shared, this is what we value about the company, but this is what we need different from you in the next 3 to 5 years. This is how you can move from being a really good supplier to us to someone who is a partner on our future journey. And that had an enormous impact because the medium was the message, right? This is not the chief exec standing on stage. And then I went into the middle and the lights came up and I said, I hear many of you are worried about what is the agenda for these 3 days, right? Because I know you like to have a nice ordered plan. You are engineers after all. And I said, well, here's the agenda. Day 1, we work out what does this organization need to do to double its impact in the next 3 years. Day 2, we work out the roadmap together to get from here to there. And day 3, we start the transformation in the room here before we leave. We do not just leave with good intentions and plans, but we start the transformation happening live in the room. The energy and commitment for those 3 days was amazing and palpable, because now we were working on the connections vertically and horizontally right across the organization. And we had the members of the board participating round the tables. So over those 3 years in the evaluation, there was the fastest growth in their share price that they've ever had. There was a growth in their annual revenues. But interestingly, there was also a significant growth in employee satisfaction and reduction in employee turnover. And in the war for talent with a global company, that is significant. So this has implications for all of those of you who are also individual coach. And the first is to realize you are never just coaching an individual manager or leader, but you're coaching with and through the coachee. They're not your client, they're your coaching partner. And together you are in service of the individual's team, division, organization, and stakeholders. And their voice needs to be in the individual coaching room. And you see, you're never coaching an individual because their team dynamic, their team-of-team system, their organizational culture, their stakeholder world, and the wider ecology all arrive in and through the coachee. So you are also together coaching the team dynamic and the culture. And this shows up that one of the most frequent questions that are brought to individual coaching from our research is, how do I develop my team? How do I deal with team conflict? Or how do I deal with difficult team members? Thus, sooner or later, all individual coachees are supervising the team coaching of their coachees. So this is why we argue that all individual coaches, whether they ever do team coaching, need to do training in team literacy and team dynamics because you're doing it indirectly, whether you're not doing it with whole teams. And so what are some of the simple tools you can take away? Well, first of all, we all have an internal team. You know, I am a chairman, I'm a professor, I'm a grandfather, I'm a father, I'm a husband. You know, I've got a family team, an extended family team. I've got other boards that I sit on. How do I integrate my internal team? How do I see conflict that comes to coaching, not as personal, but as systemic? After 48 years of doing this work, I'm absolutely convinced that over 90% of conflict in organizations is not personal or interpersonal, even though that's often how it shows up. It's because those people are carrying different systemic needs for the organization. So helping to reframe conflict systemically is very critical for all leaders and all coaches. You could ask the coachee to do a picture sculpt of their team, and then around the outside, look at the connections between teams. So we are focusing on the relational spaces in the team and between teams. You can bring in empty chairs for the coachee to sit and talk about what do the teams upstream need from them, the teams downstream, the teams above them, or the teams below. So we're bringing different team voices into the room, and we can use empty chairs or objects to actually kind of map out around the room the wider system. So what we need to realize for team coaches is that every team is a team of teams, that it is even more important to focus on the team's external relationships than the internal relationships. And all team coaching needs to be in service of the wider team of teams, the organization, the stakeholders, and the great global challenges. And that done well, team coaching can become, and team of teams coaching, a major approach to organizational transformation. Because people don't resist change, they resist being changed. And in this approach, everyone is a co-creator of the destination and the journey to get there. So thank you. If there is any very short questions, and Naveen, that you might have, I'm very willing to answer them before I finish.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Peter, for sharing your wisdom here. We do have a question, and I personally also have one question, but let me read out the participant. I know we are just a little bit over time, but I'll take this question. The question from the audience is, when the teams have spread across different geographies or regions, leaders as well as the team members are coming from different cultural backgrounds, how to effectively create the bonding between such teams?
To go back to my important line, it's the purpose that creates the team. And often, if we're really clear about the purpose, and we've translated that purpose into clear team objectives and KPIs that can only be achieved through collaboration, that creates the bonding. Yes, having just been watching the India-England cricket team, what creates the bonding is not that we all necessarily like each other, but we know we depend upon each other for success. And I think sometimes we approach the issue of bonding at the interpersonal level rather than at the purpose level. Does that make sense? But that I would still say is that there is stuff that team coaches need to do about. There's some processes that we have in my leadership team coaching book about how you share, look, this with each other. This is what you need to know about myself and my background and my culture in order to partner and team well with me. Yes, and we have a whole kind of structure for doing that in multicultural teams. So I hope, Naveen, that kind of at least addresses it in two ways.
Got you. I have more follow-up questions, but in the interest of time, I need to probably stop here. But thank you so much, Peter, for joining the session today and sharing your wisdom. So I will definitely put this recording. I know a lot of people are asking about your recording. They're interested to know and listen in again later. And we'll also be sending the professor's latest book, Teams and Teams of Coaching link to all the participants through email later today or tomorrow. But thank you so much, Professor, for joining us here.
And if there are other further questions, people can always email me because the email is on the slides.
I will do that. Yeah, will ask. Thank you so much, Peter.
Thank you, and have a great rest of conference.
Thank you, Peter.